You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
What are the top issues and trends in our industry, and what do we expect that the future may hold? We're going to get some answers today from NACS President and CEO Henry Armour, so let's just get started. Welcome, Henry.
Hey, great to be with you, Jeff.
And let's just dive right in. One of the first things that we started out with is we just said, hey, what's going on in the industry? You've been at the helm of NACS for over 17 years now, over half a century in the industry. Are there anything, or are they a few things that are fundamentally different today than they were when you first started in our industry? Let's talk about that to start.
None at all. Just joking. Just joking. I mean, the world has radically changed, right? I mean, if I really think back 50 years, I was 20 years old then as I started my first company when I was 28. I was working in a couple of companies before then. There are three things that really jump to mind for me that has significantly changed, radically changed. One is, this employer-employee influence balance, right? 50 years ago, what the employer said went. If your employer told you something, that was gospel. You didn't question it at all. Today, there is a much more balanced relationship between employers and employees. So I think that's a major change. And by the way, these changes I'm talking about, they certainly are taking place in our industry, but they're taking place in all industries and around the world. The second thing that, I think really has changed a lot is the competitive set is much broader than it was 50 years ago, right? You don't know who your competitor's going to be next year. You may not even know who your competitor's going to be next month or next week, right? Let me give you a couple examples of that. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, did we think Amazon would really enter bricks and mortar retail with just walk out technology? Nobody had a clue that was going to happen. We're looking a little bit forward. Starbucks and Targets, would we have imagined, well, first of all, I'm not sure we would be imagining electric cars 50 years ago, but would we imagine that fueling, the sale of electricity for EVs, would that be taking place at Starbucks? I don't think so. And then the third thing, without question, change is just much faster today than it used to be. I mean, I'm reminded of a quote by, I think his name is Graham Wood, who said, change has never been faster than it is today, and it will never be slower again, right? So those are the three big things that jump to mind of what's really changed over 50 years.
Of those three big things, let's spend a little bit more time on the first one, this employee-employer imbalance. I would assume that, it's a continuum. It goes one way, it goes the other way. I would also imagine that this dynamic has changed, not in the last 2-3 years, but as people are more able to travel about the internet, it allows people, let's just say in decades ago, you were a company town, essentially, and you couldn't really move very easily from place to place. But now it's much more easy to move about. And of course, that places more of a challenge or opportunity for leadership. I threw a lot there. Let's just start with the first part of that. What are some of the factors that you think have been driving this change in the employee-employer imbalance?
Jeff, I think the foundation of it is what you mentioned. I think people are much more physically mobile today than 50 years ago. and digitally mobile than they were before. So I think part of that balance is people have a broader set. I mean, one of the other things I said has really changed is the competitive set has changed. Hey, the competitive set for an employer with respect to where they find labor has really changed. It's really broadened a great deal. So I think that's at the root of it. I think as relative and real wage rates and income has increased, I think that has enabled people, particularly physically, to be more mobile. They can move around. So I think that's probably the cause of it. I think the response to it. How do you respond to an expanded competitive set, right? And you have to ask yourself, what is in this balance? And if the employee is kind of more able to look around, what's going to appeal to them? And I think internal culture has probably been never more important than it is today. If you were living in a company town, or if you know what's that's probably in the 1920s and 30s, but 50 years ago, that you lived in Cleveland, and there were only so many options really to go to work. Well, today there's a ton of options around the region, around the country, around the world. And so one of the things I think employees are looking for is really an internal culture that excites them about going to work, and they want to be treated more equitably. They want their increased influence in this relationship to really be recognized. And I think a big piece of that is all about communications from a CEO's point of view. So what are the things that are so much more important today than 50 years ago? And one is communicating with your employees, with your teams, right? There's both downward communication and what I call upward listening, because employees really want to be listened to also. So employees, they want to know what's going on in the company. They want to know what the new initiatives are. And they especially want to know why, right? They also want to be listened to. And I think they appreciate the fact that their ideas, their thoughts, their desires, the way they would do it isn't necessarily the right thing, but they want their employers, they want their bosses, their supervisors to listen to them. And that's, I think, in this change in balance between in the employer-employee influence, I think that's a real key. It's internal culture.
And that's it wasn't the first time that you said this in a meeting yesterday. You said there is nothing more important than we do than culture. Mm-hmm. And it is something that you hear over and over, I assume, in many other meeting rooms around the country, around the globe. As you travel, do you see the importance of culture that is globally, or do you see it as something that is a little bit more institutionalized in North America?
Well, as I've told all of you guys, right? Staff meeting yesterday, but I've told it many, many times to you all. All organizations have cultures, right? Most of them are unintentional, right? And what culture really, good culture, is intentional culture. It doesn't just happen. You have to work at it. But culture, I think people use that word a lot. And what does that mean, and what does it look like? Culture is really behaviors. It's expected and actual interpersonal behaviors within an organization and how you set norms, how you set expectations that drive at NACS, as you guys know very much, we focus on how do we develop a culture of constructive behaviors. We relish different perspectives. We relish debate. This isn't about being nice and doing kumbaya all the time. We want different points of view because with different points of view, it allows us to make better decisions. But how do we harvest those and how do we put them together in its constructive engagement? So, Jeff, you asked about the around the world. There's in some companies, there's an intentional focus on that. And I hear that in Chile, for instance. I hear that members in Australia. I hear that in members in Switzerland. But I also see members, leading members of ours, that don't so much talk about their culture, but they model their culture. And you see when you go to meetings, you see how the behaviors are constructive, collaborative behaviors, and you know it's going on. And by the way, these aren't necessarily the biggest, glitziest companies. You see that in stores, right? I mean, I used to, as you know, own a chain of convenience stores in the Pacific Northwest. And each little team, each little organism of people, you can have a corporate culture, but how that plays out in small teams differ. And you'll have a store that is just rocking and rolling, and people are having fun, and they're helping their teammates all the time. And then you can have stores that, aren't so great in interpersonal behaviors.
And a lot of that, I imagine, starts with how management sets expectations for the store level leaders. But is there anything that should be done at the store level that separates a great store from an okay store or a poor performing store? What does a manager do in one of those stores that's just exceptional?
All leaders, people look at leadership as this making great decisions. You're a great leader because you make great decisions. I don't think that's really at the core of being an effective leader. I think at the core of being an effective leader is creating an environment in which talented people can achieve far more together than they can individually. So what a great store manager does is create that environment. That, it's a lot of role modeling, it's listening, it's being responsive, it's making hard decisions. I mean, people think of being constructive behaviors as a easy street. Sometimes it's not an easy street. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions, but it is about listening, being transparent, and being honest, right? And that's what a good store manager does. Obviously, many people have told all of us, right? Don't expect somebody to do something for you that you wouldn't do yourself, right? There are things like that. But at the core of it, it's about creating the environment. Whether you're there or not, it's what environment you create within a unit.
Now, when we went on a recent Ideas to Go shoot, we talked to, now in the olden days, you used to hear about people hire for skills, specific skills that will be needed in this job. And we went to one place, you'll see it in Ideas to Go. And this place said that they start watching you before you even come into the job interview, and they even put some things there to kind of test you before you even get there, because they want to know what type of person you are before you even start your question and answer period. And I just think we both paused and it's like, can you just please repeat that again? It was so cool to hear how people think about how to find people, because I think one of the phrases with culture is culture is how you behave when you think no one's looking.
Right.
And to that company's point too, you can't teach someone how to be a good person. So in terms of hiring for skill set, sure, you can teach someone the skills, but you can't teach them how to be a decent human being if they're not holding the door or picking up the money that was on the floor and turning it in, or picking up the trash that they see when they're, throwing out the little tests for the future employees.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. What's the name of that company? Is that a secret?
It's in Wisconsin.
Oh,
yeah,
all right.
They're pretty much they're pretty well known there.
Come to the greatest show on earth, the NACS show in Las Vegas this October to find out.
I can't give away everything, right?
Yeah, we can't. We'll get back to that in a bit.
Pretty sneaky.
Yes. Now competition. We talked about what's going on with employees. Let's talk a little bit about competition. It used to be that, I don't even want to go back too far, but competition is whatever somebody wants whenever they want it, and that's really what we've heard as the mantra in our industry: anytime, anywhere. And that is a huge shift from not decades ago, but a few years ago. And that's got to be really difficult to execute or to try to think about. We've seen it in Asia, where people is just exceptional, and we've seen it advance here in the United States and elsewhere around the globe. What are some of the things that you've seen that have really impressed you in related to looking at this new competitive threats, challenges, and opportunities?
Well, let me take a step back from just examples that you're asking for. When I say there's broader competitive sets, if we're in our own industry, right, you have to deliver better than your competitor, your direct competitor is delivering a value proposition to the consumer, right? To me, that's all about benchmarking. That's all about, looking around, who's the leading convenience store, who's the leading fuel retailer, what are they doing that is super relevant to my customers, and I have to emulate that. In many ways, I have to copy that, right? That's benchmarking in your, core competitive set. But what we're seeing today, and you have to do that, by the way. If you don't do that, then you're average, and the consumer knows that, and you need average support, right? You're going to get average customer count and stuff. I think what's interesting today is that this connection of new innovation from outside the industry, right, that introduces new opportunities to surpass your traditional core competitor, right? And to do that, you have to have much better peripheral vision, not only what's going on in retail, but what's going on in new technologies. And you have to think, what's the relevance of some of this stuff, right? So, we looked at NACS. Jeff and Chrissy, you guys have been on the staff a while, right? We looked at Amazon 10 years ago, and we went, while everybody else wasn't really considering them a retailer, we did. We said, hey, these guys are retailing, but in a different way. They're doing it digitally. right? And then what happened during COVID was how do you use that technology and marrying it with this idea, I think, Jeff, you used any product, anytime, anywhere, or something deal, which is the ultimate of convenience. How do we use the digital technology that, for instance, Amazon has in their traditional digital platform to allow us to reinvent convenience? And we started marrying, we can deliver stuff, right? And we can take orders online. And then we saw, again, a retailer that's not in our core competitive set, Starbucks, transform themselves from being the least convenient place to buy a cup of coffee to becoming perhaps the most convenient place with mobile order and pay. Skip the line, order your product, pay for it, and just come by and pick it up. You eliminate all that friction. So this peripheral vision in you don't have to be first to market. I mean, when you're first to market, you can leave a lot of blood on the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've lost a lot of blood being a very progressive retailer sometimes, but you have to be aware and be fast to be second to market in a lot of these things, right? And that's where I think peripheral vision is the response, the meaningful response to this broader and broader competitive set.
It's basically retail tinkering. Just kind of like instead of going to a workshop and trying to build something, you just kind of look at what the competition's doing. What's my angle around it? Thinking you'd said when we've been around for a while. I remember when I first started, one of the biggest threats was Priceline. Our podcast guest that we had, William Shatner, was the voice of Priceline, and Priceline was that was the way to buy gas. You buy the cheapest gas, name your price, and that at the time felt like a real threat. It didn't happen because of a lot of reasons. Not sure quite how many you want to go into, but things you have to kind of sort out. What is real as a long-term threat? What is a temporary, and what can I do in that whole scheme? And that's hard to do.
It is hard to do, and there are stages of doing that, right? It's, the most immediate is look around to who else is in the food business, like Starbucks, the example I just gave. But there's also more abstract ways of thinking in technology. It occurs to me the stories about Bill Gates and what he reads, right? He doesn't read a lot about making chips or better keyboards. He reads human biology. He reads really what's the connection with that and what Microsoft does. Well, user interfaces, at the root of it is that. But it's having a curiosity to really explore what's going on around you in a very broad sense, to kind of pick out, hey, this is an interesting idea. How does that play with my customers, or the customers I want, and what can I do about that? It also, I think, this peripheral vision, there's what do you bring inside your company or inside your market. It's also by, hey, listen, I've got some real competencies here, right? I've got some real uniqueness here. What opportunities are there in other channels that, I can actually be an entrant someplace else. I'm reminded, didn't we have, was it Ideas to Go with Tiger Fuels and their whole power deal, right?
Solar panels, yep.
Solar panels and things like that. I mean, they were looking at that. They had a commercial energy business before, but they looked at that. They had a competency by using those on their stores. They said, wait a minute, we can actually build a business by taking that competency and create a different company with it. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind also. Where can you leverage your competencies and skills?
Well, you had mentioned it's important to explore what's going on. And let's just end with talking about where's the best place a convenience retailer could possibly explore what's going on. Anything on the calendar coming up? Oh, there's a NACS show coming up in Las Vegas, October 1 through 4. Subtle, not subtle plug. Chrissy and I have each been to the show at least 17, 20 times.
17,
You've been more than that, Henry. What are your thoughts on somebody who's going for the first time, or somebody still has a week to say, okay, I'm going to go? What's your advice as someone who's been to these as a retailer and been as a NACS staff person?
First of all, I thought you were going to throw me this big softball to hit of where should people go to see the greatest things in our industry. And
we'll fix it in post.
You spilled the beans. Obviously, it's, as I call it, the greatest show on earth. In all deference to Ringling Brothers, it is the NACS show, really. So, you ask, what should a person going to the show for the first time, or they're preparing their week out or something? Listen, I see companies who have been, by the way, the first NACS show I went to was in 1986. And I think I've missed one NACS show between then and now. So my count, it's around 36 NACS shows, more than half of them as a retailer. And I'm catching up on the other half as the CEO of NACS. But to get the most value of the NACS show, you have to be disciplined, right? I mean, I think there's three things you ought to do. And what I always did at Westar, my old company, you have to have a plan before you go to the show. Mm-hmm. If you just go to the show and go, oh, what am I going to do? You're just going to be overwhelmed, and you're not going to have the ROI you would. So you have to have a plan. And what does that consist of? I think it really consists of three things. One is kind of what educational sessions are you going to go to, and what ones are your teammates going to go to? Doesn't make a lot of sense. We have, 40 or 50 educational sessions at NACS show. Doesn't make a lot of sense for everybody to go to the same sessions. I mean, you got to assign what's important, what topics.
You have to divide and conquer.
Absolutely. The second thing you need to do in this plan is really discover what vendors do you need to talk to. Now, you have some existing vendors that you need to touch bases with. You need to explore what upcoming marketing is going to be and so forth. But you have in your mind, hey, this is a new category, or I'm seeing some new stuff that is gaining momentum, and I don't have a relationship with that company. You need to put them on your list. If possible, reach out ahead of time. But if not, at least get the whole map of the trade show floor and highlight where these vendors are, right? And then fix your expo plan logistically efficiently, right? Don't be bouncing back and forth between Hall A and Hall C, right? Have a plan there. And then finally, I think you really need to plan on visiting the Cool New Products Pavilion. I'm amazed today, right? I lead NACS today. I'm not a retailer, although I spend 70% of my time on the road in convenience stores. But I'm amazed at the innovation, the new products that are coming to market for us. And the Cool New Product Pavilion puts a spotlight on those, right? Mm-hmm. I think it was one of the great innovations that NACS did, is doing that, because, many exhibitors have new products in their booths, but the focus isn't on what's really new and different, what I have to do. And when you go there, make some notes on which ones you're excited about, and then go visit that booth, that vendor during the show. So number one, have a plan. Number two, hey, put on your walking shoes and hit the expo floor hard on the first day and the second day of the expo. Hit it hard, right? Because that's where the value is. And then, number three, and I think people super underutilize this. We didn't at Westar, because my old company, every day after the show, my team would get together and we would debrief each other, what we saw and so forth. And then we used day three, which is a super valuable day, is to go back and visit the vendors that we were, super interested in, that we didn't spend enough time with, or we spent no time with, because they have a little more time on day three to have substantive conversations. And then the rest of the day, explore the parts of the show that wasn't part of your plan. So those are the three things I would do. Have a plan before you go. Make sure you hit it hard on the first 2 days of the expo, and use day three. Use day three, because it's super valuable.
Yeah, and for Cool New Products and the new exhibitor area as well, you can get into those an hour before the official expo hours start. So and retailers can, in theory, spend an hour more doing, what they want to do. So there's lots of dedicated time to check that stuff out.
I think that's a great point, Chrissy.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to the next show, even though every time I look at our website, it shows a countdown. And it gives me tiny heart palpitations of how much time we don't have left before we head to Vegas. But we're very excited. We're super excited. And it's going to be a great live show. Hopefully no hiccups from pandemics or anything that we can put in our rearview mirror officially and just get on with it.
No, the planning leading up to it, as you guys know, we've the whole team here has spent, we spend more than a year, by the way, for each show. So we have colleagues that are working on the Atlanta show right now. So we've done a ton of planning for Las Vegas. We're all primed to do it. And I'm with you, Chrissy. I've got a long to-do list before that show opens.
Well, it always gets done. Well, Henry, thank you for joining us. And of course, we'll have you on again fairly soon, because it's always a pleasure to talk to you and to share your wealth of knowledge with the folks who are listening. So thanks, everyone, for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.